Welcome back to VJ's Dark Insights. You ready to dive into another really creepy story with me today?
Always, always ready, especially when it comes to urban legends, right? Those are always fascinating.
Absolutely. And this one is especially unsettling, I think. The one we're going to be talking about today is the Russian sleep experiment.
Oh yeah, that's a classic, a real internet classic, isn't it?
It is, and it's a real, I guess you could call it a blend of science fiction and horror.
Yeah, for sure. It really plays with those feels of like, what if? What if science goes too far?
Exactly, and it's set in kind of a really intense historical context too.
Oh, absolutely. Cold War, Russia, a time when tensions were high
Mhm.
and sleep, well, sleep was a luxury they couldn't always afford.
Yeah, they needed those soldiers alert and ready to fight constantly.
Right. So the story goes they were experimenting with all sorts of things to try to push human limits, and one of those was a sleep-inhibiting gas.
Which is where this whole experiment comes in.
Exactly.
They had these 5 subjects, and they were all prisoners of war.
Okay, so right off the bat, we're in ethically murky territory, using prisoners as test subjects.
Not exactly informed consent.
No, not at all, but well, that's what they did. They locked these guys in a sealed chamber, pumped in this mysterious gas, and the promise was if they could endure 30 days of this, they would be granted their freedom.
Freedom for 30 days of no sleep.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about that deal. But I guess when you're a prisoner of war, you don't have a lot of options, do you?
No, you don't. So they started this experiment, right? Researchers are monitoring them 24/7, watching their every move, documenting everything.
Kind of a creepy Big Brother situation,
Oh,
right?
yeah, big time.
So what happened? Did they just stay awake the whole time? I mean, is that even possible?
So early on, things seemed pretty normal. The subjects were talking to each other, interacting, but then things started to get strange.
Oh, I bet they did.
Life
I
के
can't imagine being
traumatic
deprived of sleep for days on
experiences
end.
तक
It
ही
would
रह
mess with
गई.
your head for sure.
Yeah.
What started happening?
Well, around day 5, their conversation started to take a dark turn. Dark how? Like, what were they saying?
They became really paranoid.
Yeah.
Fixated on past traumas and really dark, disturbing thoughts.
So it's like the sleep deprivation was stripping away their inhibitions, exposing their darkest fears and anxieties.
Exactly, like it was peeling back layers of their sanity and
Yeah, and we know from actual sleep deprivation studies, the real kind, that prolonged sleeplessness can lead to some really serious mental problems like psychosis.
oh yeah, psychosis, hallucinations.
Absolutely. You start to lose touch with reality, see things that aren't there, hear voices.
It can be truly debilitating. And then, to make matters worse, on day 9, one of these subjects just snaps.
Snaps. Snaps how?
Starts screaming uncontrollably for hours. He just screams and screams
Yeah.
till he actually damages his vocal cords.
Oh, wow. That's intense. I mean, that level of desperation to be driven to that kind of self-harm, it really makes you wonder what was going on inside his head.
And it's really creepy.
What's that?
A few days later, another subject does the exact same thing.
Starts screaming, too.
Yeah. Screaming until he can't anymore.
So now you've got 2 subjects who can barely even speak. And then silence.
From day 10 to day 14, they go completely quiet.
Really? Totally silent.
Yeah. But the oxygen levels in the chamber indicated they were still alive. Whatever was happening in their minds, it was beyond anything the researchers had anticipated.
Oh, man. That silence is even more unnerving than the screaming, isn't it? It makes you wonder, what were they thinking? What were they experiencing? Were they trapped in some kind of waking nightmare?
It's a terrifying thought.
It is. And then, on day 15, the researchers decide to try something new. They offer the subjects a deal. Cooperate with us and you'll be set free.
You'd think after 15 days of this torment, they would jump at the chance. Right
I didn't
on.
think so. But instead, one of the subjects responds with a phrase that sends chills down my spine. We no longer want to be freed.
Chillin', right?
Yeah. What could possibly make someone reject freedom after what they've been through? It suggests a level of psychological manipulation, of brokenness that's truly disturbing. These men were so deeply affected by the experiment, so far gone mentally, that freedom had lost all meaning.
And that's when things descend into utter chaos.
What do you mean? What happened?
They finally open the chamber, and what they find is truly horrific.
No. What did they see?
The subjects are covered in self-inflicted wounds, tearing at their own flesh. And disturbingly, some reports say they were even consuming it.
Oh, God, that's just horrifying. It's like they had completely lost their humanity, become something monstrous.
And on top of the gruesome injuries, they were exhibiting superhuman strength, resistant to sedatives, as if some primal instinct had taken over.
It's like the sleep deprivation had unleashed something truly terrifying within them.
And they're still begging for the gas, as if it's the only thing keeping them tethered to some kind of reality.
It's a truly chilling image, isn't it? To be so utterly broken and dependent on this substance that robbed them of their sanity.
One of the subjects, severely wounded, needs surgery.
Oh, man. I can't even imagine.
And get this, he undergoes the entire procedure without any anesthesia.
What? No anesthesia? How is that even possible?
And throughout the surgery, he's laughing, claiming that he has seen death.
That's bone-chilling. To endure that level of pain and remain conscious, it's like his mind had completely fractured.
Eventually, the lead researcher, completely overwhelmed by the horror of it all, he shoots one of the subjects.
Shoots him. Oh, God.
And as the subject lies dying, he utters one final haunting phrase. "Have you finally freed me?"
That's just tragic. Did the researcher believe he was granting the subject mercy? Or was it an act of desperation, driven by his own guilt and fear? It's a question that really speaks to the ethical dilemmas at the heart of this story.
The remaining subjects are ultimately killed, leaving behind a legacy of horror and a chilling testament to the potential darkness that lurks within the human psyche.
It's a story that stays with you, doesn't it? A chilling reminder of what can happen when we push the boundaries of human endurance too far. But before we get too carried away, we need to address the elephant in the room.
What's that?
The fact that there's no scientific evidence.
That morbid curiosity about what lies beyond the boundaries of conventional science and human experience.
Absolutely. There's something about the darkness, the things we can't explain, that draws us in. The story's popularity highlights our fascination with the dark side of human nature and the enduring power of storytelling to explore these themes.
It's like a window into the abyss, a glimpse into the potential for human evil, even if it's just a fictional glimpse.
Right. And maybe, just maybe, that's why it's so unsettling. Because deep down, we recognize a part of ourselves in this story. That capacity for darkness, for cruelty, that we all possess to some degree.
It's a chilling thought, but maybe one worth pondering, nonetheless. So even if it's a fabrication, it still leaves a lasting impression, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. It makes you wonder what really transpired in those secret Soviet labs during the Cold War. Was there something to this story, even a kernel of truth? That ambiguity, that sense of uncertainty is part of what makes it so effective, so disturbing.
It's a reminder that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are not the ones lurking in the shadows, but the ones we create ourselves. In our minds, through our stories, and through our fears, we have the power to create our own nightmares.
That's a really profound observation, and it's something to keep in mind as we delve deeper into the world of urban legends. Because the lines between fiction and reality can be surprisingly blurry. And sometimes the most unsettling stories are the ones that hit a little too close to home. It's a story that sticks with you, doesn't it?
It really does, yeah.
A chilling reminder of what can happen when we push the boundaries of human endurance too far. But before we get too carried away, we need to address the elephant in the room. The fact that there's no scientific evidence to support any of this, no official documentation, no credible witnesses.
So you're saying it's likely a fabrication, a very well-crafted and disturbing fabrication, but a fabrication nonetheless.
Most likely, yes. The story has all the hallmarks of an urban legend. The sensationalized details, the lack of verifiable sources, the way it's spread primarily through online forums and word of mouth.
But then why has it gained so much traction? Why does it resonate so deeply with so many people?
That's the intriguing thing about urban legends, isn't it? They tack into our deepest fears and anxieties, often reflecting societal concerns.
In this case, anxieties about scientific progress, government control, and the potential for human cruelty.
Exactly. It's a modern-day Frankenstein story, a cautionary tale about the dangers of tampering with forces we don't fully understand. We have this insatiable desire for knowledge, but what happens when that pursuit leads us down a dark path? The Russian sleep experiment, even if fictional, serves as a powerful allegory. It makes us question the limits of human knowledge and the ethical boundaries we must establish to prevent such horrors from becoming reality.
It also plays into our fascination with the unknown, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
That morbid curiosity about what lies beyond the boundaries of conventional science and human experience.
Absolutely. There's something about the darkness, the things we can't explain, that draws us in. The story's popularity highlights our fascination with the dark side of human nature and the enduring power of storytelling to explore these themes.
It's like a window into the abyss, a glimpse into the potential for human evil, even if it's just a fictional glimpse.
Right. And maybe, just maybe, that's why it's so unsettling. Because deep down, we recognize a part of ourselves in this story, that capacity for darkness, for cruelty that we all possess to some degree.
It's a chilling thought, but maybe one worth pondering, nonetheless. So even if it's a fabrication, it still leaves a lasting impression, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. It makes you wonder what really transpired in those secret Soviet labs during the Cold War. Was there something to this story, even a kernel of truth? That ambiguity, that sense of uncertainty, is part of what makes it so effective, so disturbing.
It's a reminder that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are not the ones lurking in the shadows, but the ones we create ourselves. In our minds, through our stories, and through our fears, we have the power to create our own nightmares.
That's a really profound observation, and it's something to keep in mind as we delve deeper into the world of urban legends, because the lines between fiction and reality can be surprisingly blurry. And sometimes the most unsettling stories are the ones that hit a little too close to home.
One thing that always kind of bugged me about this story is the whole gas thing.
The gas.
Yeah, they never really explained what it is.
Oh, you mean like the chemical makeup?
Yeah, like how it actually works, what it's even called. It's all very vague.
Well, I guess that's part of what makes it so creepy, right? The unknown.
True. It's like this blank slate onto which we can project all our fears about what science is capable of.
Exactly. Like, could something like that actually exist? A gas that could completely rob you of sleep.
Right. It really makes you think.
Yeah.
And I guess that lack of detail just adds to the horror element, too.
Totally. The unknown is always scarier than something you can define and understand.
Another thing that always stood out to me was the mention of the Russian intelligence service shutting the whole thing down.
Oh, yeah. Like, even they realized it had gone too far.
Exactly. It makes you wonder what their motives were in the first place.
Right. Was it purely scientific curiosity? Or were there darker, more sinister objectives at play?
It's like, did they want to weaponize sleep deprivation?
Mm-hmm.
Turn these guys into some kind of super soldiers?
It definitely raises a lot of questions about the potential for power to be corrupted, whether it's scientific, governmental, or individual.
And the fact that we're still talking about this story, even though it's likely a fabrication, says something about our own anxieties about those very things, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's a reminder that even with good intentions, the pursuit of knowledge can lead down some pretty dark paths, and that the line between science fiction and reality can be pretty thin sometimes.
So where do we land on this whole Russian sleep experiment thing? Fact or fiction?
Well, based on all the available evidence, or lack thereof, it's safe to say it's probably an urban legend. But like we've been discussing, that doesn't make it any less impactful. It taps into those primal fears about human nature, about the potential for science to be misused.
Right. It's like a cautionary tale. A reminder to be careful about what we wish for. Because sometimes the pursuit of knowledge can come at a terrible cost.
Exactly. The Russian sleep experiment, whether real or imagined, forces us to confront some pretty uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world around us. It's a story that should make us pause and think about the choices we make, both individually and as a society.
Well, there you have it. Our deep dive into the chilling tale of the Russian sleep experiment. A story that blurs the lines between science fiction and reality and ultimately leaves us with more questions than answers.
And as we wrap up, I think it's worth remembering that even though this particular story might be a fabrication, the themes it explores are very real. The potential for human cruelty, the dangers of unchecked ambition, the seductive power of the unknown, these are things we grapple with every day.
So true. And I think the fact that this story continues to fascinate and terrify people speaks to the power of storytelling itself. We use stories to make sense of the world, to explore our fears, and to confront the darkness that exists both within us and outside of us.
Exactly. And sometimes those stories, even the fictional ones, can teach us some valuable lessons about ourselves and the world around us.
Well said. And on that note, we've come to the end of our deep dive. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We hope you found it thought-provoking and maybe just a little bit unsettling.
Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and maybe try to get a good night's sleep tonight.
And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with your fellow truth seekers. We'll be back soon with another chilling tale from the depths of the internet.